Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So, yesterday began Banned Books Week. This is the week where we celebrate literature that has been banned or censored in one form or another. And luckily, that's not something that happens a lot anymore. Certainly, there are some stories here and there about various books that sort of cause people to go into a tizzy, if you will. And I'll cover one such story here momentarily and give you some more information about Banned Books Week. But first, I want to make sure that I let you know that since this is Banned Books Week, I am celebrating as I have become accustomed to doing over the last few years. And, well, this year I'm actually giving away a lot of ebooks. So if you go, I'll post the link in the show notes for one place you can go that links over to all of the ebooks that I'm giving away. If you have a Kindle, or actually you don't need a Kindle, you can use Amazon's Cloud Reader to read Kindle books online. So it's a free sort of browser plugin, I think, the Cloud Reader. So I'll post that link, giving away ebooks all week. Well, not all week, until Friday, because Kindle only allows you to set up a giveaway for up to 5 days per quarter. So every 90 days you can have up to 5 days of giveaways. So I've set it to run Monday through Friday. So until midnight Friday, and I think that's midnight Pacific time. But you've got several days to follow the links, download the free ebooks, and even if you've purchased the book before, just go ahead, download the ebook, because it helps with ratings and stuff. And I don't know if Amazon still necessarily lists the free ebooks in a separate category, but I know at one time they did. And just like being high up on the list of, like top 1,000 in free ebooks, it gets people interested. They look at the book, and then they might not get it while it's on the free thing. They might wind up buying it after. So a giveaway could wind up being beneficial to book sales. So I'll post that link in the show notes. It's going to be fpp.cc. And actually, I think right now it's the very top post because I have the post pinned. So when you go there, it's the top post. So there's that, and also want to give sort of a program warning that there will not be an episode this Friday or most likely next Friday. And that is because I will be in court. Not as a defendant, not as a plaintiff, but as a journalist. The Robin Hood trial is going back to court. I know I've talked about this before, where there are, I believe, 6 people being sued by the city of Keene for basically plugging parking meters. One of the people doesn't even live in the U.S. anymore, and a couple of the people that are part of the lawsuit being sued don't live in Keene anymore. And I think really only one of these 6 people still even goes out and puts money in parking meters on a somewhat regular basis. But alas, they are being dragged into court again. This because the state Supreme Court partially remanded the case back to the Superior Court. So I'll be in court this Friday, October 2nd, and next Friday, October 9th. And I'll be live tweeting the court hearings. That way, anybody that's interested can follow that on Twitter. Twitter username is at Darryl W. Perry. I will be using hashtag Robin Hood Trial. So if you just want to follow the trial following a single hashtag instead of looking at everything I tweet, you can follow hashtag Robinhood trial, and I'll post a link to that. That way, if you're not sure how the Twitter works or how to follow a hashtag, I'll make it easy, and I'll post a link in the show notes. So let me jump into the story from Slate.com, and I'll talk a little bit about banned books before I talk about Catalonia. And I definitely want to talk about Catalonia because the voters there yesterday did something that is kind of amazing in one way or another, and I'll explain when I get to the story. So Slate has an article about Banned Books Week, and it says Banned Books Week is a crock. That's good news. No one bans books anymore. We won. Well, except, we haven't won because there still are people that are causing hubbubs and raising a fuss over various books. And, well, they begin their article. The latest story about censorship in America began when a Knoxville, Tennessee woman named Jackie Sims found out that her 15-year-old son had been assigned to read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and that was summer reading. Rebecca Skloot's 2010 book tells the story of a poor black woman whose cancerous cervical cells became the basis for medical advances, including the polio vaccine and in vitro fertilization, without her knowledge. It's a best-selling, critically acclaimed account about the science, race, ethics, and family. But Sims told a local TV station that she considers the book to be pornographic and wanted it out of the hands of all students in the school district. And, it's kind of interesting, serendipitous, if you will, that I'm covering this story, and I'll explain why. Because I had a similar story about this situation where the woman in Tennessee says, this book about cancer is pornography. I had a similar story in my show prep folder. And before I began the show, I wanted to make sure that I covered Banned Books Week, typed in Banned Books Week and news, and lo and behold, one of the top stories was from Slate. And the headline that I saw said, "Why do we celebrate Banned Books Weeks?" And I was like, all right, great story. I'll go with it. And then I open it up and I start reading, and it's about this woman in Tennessee that I wanted to cover anyway. So it's, at least to me, it's kind of interesting. Maybe that, little thing about serendipity made absolutely no sense or difference to you. But nonetheless, I continue with the article. Skloot, that is the woman who wrote the book, she announced on her Facebook page, quote, "Just in time for Banned Books Week, a parent in Tennessee has confused gynecology with pornography." The story took off from there. By the end of the whole kerfuffle, Sims's objection had been covered by The Guardian, the LA Times, the New York Daily News, People, Salon, Jezebel, and beyond. Every right-thinking person agreed this was an outrage. But there's more, as well as Skloot's response to at least one woman wanting her book banned, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
As Scoot's response indicated, the brouhaha got a boost from the approach of Banned Books Week, an annual event promoted with much fanfare by the American Library Association and other organizations. This year's event began Sunday, September 22nd, and runs through the end of the week, October 3rd, with parties and readouts all over the country. It's a cause that's easy to support. Banned Books Week is well-intentioned, and it's unquestionably run by the good guys. In the battle between a prudish mom and freedom, it's hard to pick sides, but in the feeding off of conflicts like Sims v. the School Board, Banned Books Week also traffics in fear-mongering over censorship, when in fact the truth is much sunnier. There is basically no such thing as a banned book in the United States in 2015. These statistics certainly sound alarming. Since Banned Books Week was instituted in 1982, the event's website informs us 11,300 books have been challenged. In 2014 alone, 311 books were banned or challenged in schools and libraries in the United States, with many more cases unreported. It would be easy to assume that the literal banning of books is still a routine occurrence in the United States. But take a closer look, and there's much less for freedom-loving readers to be concerned with. The modifier, banned or challenged, contains a lot of wiggle room. For one, a challenge in the ALA's definition is a formal written complaint filed with the library or school requesting that the material be removed because of content or appropriateness. By that definition, Sims's one-woman freakout in Tennessee qualifies as a challenge, despite the fact that it posed no real threat to Skloot's book, let alone the overall freedom to read. Once upon a time, books were banned, and book bans were a serious issue in the United States. The Comstock Law, passed by Congress in 1873, made it illegal to circulate obscene literature. Even classics like the Canterbury Tale fell under the description in the eyes of the Victorian moralist, and in the middle of the last century, publishers and booksellers of forbidden novels including Tropic of Cancer and Fanny Hill were actually prosecuted in court. But in the years since, social and legal tolerance for censorship plummeted. A 1982 court decision, Island Trees School District v. Pico, ruled that local school boards cannot remove books from the libraries simply because they are offended by them. There's a little bit more to this article. I will post the link into the show notes. You can read the full article at your leisure. But even though I just want to ramble about Banned Books Week for a moment before I get into the story about Catalonia, even though books are not regularly banned in the United States, it's still important to remember and acknowledge that such a thing has happened previously. And there's a quote, I forget who it comes from, but there's a quote that every library should have something that offends at least one person. And I completely agree. Every library should have something that, causes people to, oh, well, I don't know if I want to read that. Okay, fine, you don't have to read that. That's part of the freedom to read, right? The freedom to read is you get to decide what and if you read something. it also means that I get to decide what I read, if and when. You can't decide for me what I read, how I read, when I read. I can't decide for you what, when, or how, or even if you read anything. So Banned Books Week, again, since books aren't actually being quote-unquote banned in the United States, I still find it to be beneficial to actually celebrate such a thing. And at the very least, it gives people a week to think about some of the books that have at various times been banned within the United States or in other countries. 1984 at one time was actually a banned book. The book of Mice and Men was at one time banned, meaning that there are people in certain places that at one time they were prohibited by law from reading that book. And there are so many more. If you go to bannedbooksweek.com, you can find the list of books that have been previously banned, books that still are banned somewhere, or books that just wind up getting some parent somewhere to write a nasty letter to the librarian and say, "How dare you?" So, bannedbooksweek.com, I'm going to celebrate as I have become accustomed to doing. And, I'm going to, this week, give away some books. So, fpp.cc, that top post there, it'll be up the rest of the week. Follow that. It has links for a bunch of different books that I'm giving away the ebook version of. So, get some free books during Banned Books Week. So, let me talk about Catalonia and what's happening there. And something that I actually find in some way to be encouraging, and hopefully it winds up catching on and spreading, and hopefully some similar groups here in the United States are able to get some momentum because of what happened in Catalonia. What am I talking about? What happened in Catalonia that has me so excited about the future? Well, Catalonia had a parliamentary election, and it's not the fact that they simply had an election. It's the results of the election. Heading into the parliamentary election, the two secessionist parties in Catalonia, the one party is Junts pel Sí, which translates Together for Yes, and the CUP, which I forget what that stands for, but those are the two separatist parties, or the secessionist parties, that Reuters is calling separatist, because they do want to separate Catalonia from Spain, so in some ways they are separatist. Before the election, they said, if we win, if we together, the Together for Yes and the CUP, if we jointly wind up winning a majority of seats in Parliament, we will declare independence. And, well, Catalans went to the polls yesterday, and these two parties, the Together for Yes and CUP, won a total of 72 out of the 135 seats in the Catalan Parliament. The acting regional government head, Artur Mas, told supporters Catalans have voted yes to independence. And this, you may recall, comes barely a year. It was, I believe, September 19th last year when voters in Scotland went to the polls to actually vote on a secessionist referendum. The question was, should Scotland be an independent nation? And, well, unfortunately, it failed in Scotland. A lot of people thought that, well, it might wind up failing in Catalonia. Nope, the Catalans were successful. Looks like there might be Catalan independence.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So before I continue telling you about the Catalan vote for independence, or what essentially is a vote for independence and why it is a vote for independence, I want to make sure I tell you about a place that you can keep your money in the free market. That is, if you're an advocate for free market money. Do you promote Bitcoin as an alternative in a fiat-centric world? If so, then you need Spend a Bit in your arsenal. It's a search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend a Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Overstock.com and Free Press Publications are just two of the thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants you will find at Spend a Bit. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. So the strong pro-independence results have dealt a blow to the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy just 3 months ahead of a national election. Rajoy has said that he will oppose any attempts to hold a referendum on secession, calling the separatist plan, quote, a nonsense, end quote, and has vowed to block it in court. Catalonia, by the way, also has Barcelona in its territory, one of the largest cities of Spain. The Spanish Constitution, according to Reuters, does not allow a region to break away, so the prospect remains hypothetical. But, you know, the U.S. Constitution also does not have a clause explicitly stating that a state or a group or a county or an individual can secede from the Union. However, there are clauses that could be interpreted as such. The Ninth Amendment, for one, says that individuals have all rights that are not specifically enumerated away from, or rather the lack to enumerate such a right does not deprive the person of the right unless it's already mentioned elsewhere that they don't have it. So basically, secession, the word does not appear anywhere in the U.S. Constitution, which means that the federal government did not claim to take that right away from people. So under a strict interpretation of the Ninth and the 10th Amendment, it could be argued that someone does have the right to secede from the United States of America. I've not read the Spanish Constitution to know if it has any similar clause, But again, just because it doesn't say you can't do it doesn't mean you can't. The article here from Reuters continues. The main secessionist group, Junts PLC, meaning Together for Yes, won 62 of the seats, while the smaller leftist CUP got another 10 seats, that according to the official results. Jointly, they obtained 47.8% of the vote in a record turnout of 78%, a big boost to an independence campaign that had been seen as losing support over the last 2 years. And this is what I was talking about when I mentioned Scotland. And yes, I realize that Scotland and Catalonia are not necessarily related. However, both were seen, at least in Scotland, it was a straight-up referendum. In Catalonia, the parliamentary election was seen by some as a referendum because the leaders of the Together for Yes and the CUP had said, if we win, we will secede. And Artur Mas had been pushing for secession for a couple of years. The Spanish Prime Minister had said, you're not allowed to have a secession vote. And, well, he's like, all right, well, we're going to do it anyway. And this, in some ways, has been a referendum on secession. And, yes, even though the parties themselves did not receive over 50% of the vote, the way the elections happened, they wound up with the majority of the seats in the parliament. And, well, they're saying they're going to move ahead, and at some point in the next 18 months, they will declare independence. I'm interested in this as a big proponent of secession. And one of the reasons, again, that I sort of tie this into Scotland is because in Catalonia it was seen that support for secession was waning, that it peaked 2 years ago, and some people sort of got disheartened when Scotland voted no because they're like, oh, well, they tried what we want to do and they failed, so maybe we'll fail as well. But no, it looks like Catalonia has at least succeeded in this one hurdle. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 18 months. The article from Reuters continues by stating that both political parties, the Together for Yes and the CUP, had said before the election that if they were successful in getting a majority, they would then be able to unilaterally declare independence within 18 months under a plan that would see the new Catalan authorities approving their own constitution and building institutions like an army, a central bank, and a judicial system. Addressing supporters of Together for Yes in Barcelona, Mas said a democratic mandate now exists to move forward with independence. Now, before I continue here with the article, I just want to state that because I am a supporter of secession, I will support anybody that's trying to break away from any other government. Now, that does not mean that I support what they are going to do after they break away. So, for instance, the Catalans are saying they want to have their own army, their own central bank, and their own judicial system. Well, I'm not a fan of those things. Obviously, I do like justice, but I don't like government-run judicial systems because those are not actual justice. Those are based on more retribution and punishing people that were charged with an offense by a government agent, whether or not the person actually did the thing, and the judge isn't really in the position to find out if the person did what they were accused of. The judge is in the position of finding out if they can basically prove that they did not do what they were accused of. Even though here in the U.S. it's supposedly innocent until proven guilty, no. It's now become you have to prove that you didn't do the thing that they said you did. Whether or not there's any evidence that you did the thing, no, prove to me that you did not. Central banking I have a huge problem with. I've got a problem with like monopolies in general, and central banking is a government-enforced monopoly on here's the money you will use because we said so, and if you don't want to use this money, well, you can go to jail. Armies, not a fan of armies. Not a fan of navies either. Salvation Army's kind of nice, but, that's not an actual army. They're not going out killing people. There's more to this article. I will post a link in the show notes. And don't forget, this Wednesday is the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, AMA@fppradio.com. No show Friday. Heads up.